Looking at any civilization's defenses, there is one building in particular that I always try to look for. That building is the Bombard Tower, because of its incredible power and because of its various uses. This video, I'm going to try to look over and see what the differences of the different Bombard Towers are. Then I'm going to try to tell you what I think the best Bombard Tower is, and then I'm going to try to show you how I normally use them. Currently, the civilizations that have access to Bombard Towers are the Byzantines, the Chinese, Italians, Koreans, Malay, which I think is an interesting choice, Portuguese, Spanish, Teutons, Turks, and Vietnamese. However, not all Bombard Towers are created equal. There are several techs that affect Bombard Towers, including masonry, architecture, treadmill crane, bracer, and any unique technologies or civilization bonuses that a Civ may have. Now, I'm not going to mention what civilizations have what technologies, but you can see it here up on the screen. Masonry and architecture give the building more HP, treadmill crane allows the building to be created faster, and bracer gives the building more range. However, these techs do not tell the full story because some civilizations have bonuses. For example, the Byzantines are lacking in masonry and architecture. However, because of their plus 40% building HP bonus, their Bombard Tower is taken down in 15 shots instead of 12 shots, as opposed to another civilization's Bombard Tower that has both of those techs. For the Chinese, all techs that improve the Bombard Tower are 20% cheaper, and in the HD expansions, they have the Great Wall tech, which gives them plus 30% HP. It is interesting to note, though, that even though the Byzantine HP bonus is larger than the Chinese one, the Chinese Bombard Tower has more HP than the Byzantine one. I don't know if this is a bug or a mistake on my part. Korean stone miners work 20% faster, and in the HD expansions, their fortifications are built 33% faster, and all Spanish buildings are built 30% faster. The Portuguese unique technology Arquebus allows the Bombard Towers to shoot with ballistics. However, after doing some tests, it seems that this is only effective against infantry. Against cavalry, the ballistics still isn't enough to allow the Bombard Tower to hit it. And as such, because Bombard Towers are still pretty effective against infantry, I think that this bonus really isn't that big of a help for the Portuguese. The Teutons can garrison 10 instead of 5 units in their Bombard Towers, meaning that if it's fully garrisoned with hand cannoneers, a Bombard Tower will shoot 2 cannonballs, and if it's fully garrisoned with Janissaries, it will shoot 3 cannonballs. Now, I really don't see the use for this except for maybe against rams. That just seems like a silly use of units, but hey, whatever floats your boat. And finally, the price tag for researching gunpowder upgrades is cut in half for the Turks, and because of their unique technology artillery, the Turks have plus 2 range on their Bombard Towers. Now that we know what each civilization's Bombard Tower bonuses are, we can figure out who has the best Bombard Towers. Now, some players are probably going to claim that this is situational, and that it depends on what you need. And sometimes you might want more HP if you're defending against rams. You might want your Bombard Towers to be built faster if you're going offensive with them. However, I think that you need to look at what are the best counters against Bombard Towers before you can make this determination. The primary counters to Bombard Towers are siege rams, bombard cannons, trebuchets, and cannon galleons. But there's something I want you to notice about the Turk Bombard Towers. They have 2 extra range, which means that they have the same range as a bombard cannon and as a normal cannon galleon, not an elite cannon galleon. And what this means is that it is very difficult for both of these units to take down Bombard Towers, at least alone anyways, because those units themselves are countered by Turk Bombard Towers. And while it is true that a Turk's opponent could put up units closer to the Bombard Tower than the bombard cannons, which would still allow them to be effective, but in normal situations, where this might not always work as well as one would hope, the Bombard Tower becomes actually a cost-effective counter to the Bombard cannons, instead of vice versa. And I think that really changes a dynamic of the game, and it really makes the Turk Bombard Towers super difficult to take down. And if they're super difficult to take down, that means that they're going to stay up longer and going to do their job better, which is why I think that the Turks have the best Bombard Towers. Second best is probably situational, and it depends on your preferred choice. I personally would choose the Koreans as the second best, mainly because their Bombard Tower has a really great application for the Korean strategy, and because that faster stone mining speed means it's going to be easier for a Korean player to field Bombard Towers, but I think it's really your choice. Now, there are pretty much two ways you can use Bombard Towers. The first way is as a defensive building, to, defend your trade and your economy, and to place on your borders to keep the enemies from coming in. And while this is basically what the Bombard Tower is designed for, it's a defensive building, I think that this isn't always the most effective way to use Bombard Towers. Because if your enemy isn't raiding you, or if they see that you have Bombard Towers, and so they make units to take them out, that means that the Bombard Towers aren't going to be destroying any units, meaning that they're not going to be useful. Instead, I would choose to do the second option if I were you, which is using Bombard Towers as an offensive weapon. And by this, I mean placing it in your opponent's economies, or placing it on your front lines in such a way that your opponent is forced to make units, to waste resources making units to counter those Bombard Towers, and to keep your opponent from making pushes into your base without losing units. This is what I think makes infrastructure strategies so strong if the civilization doing it has Bombard Towers, because this really does allow the player to keep enemies from regaining areas that they have already lost. And I think that this is probably the best way to use Bombard Towers. Well, these are basically my thoughts on the Bombard Tower. It's a really incredible unit to use sometimes. See you later.